live in a couple seconds. Wow, that started quick. Hi, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter, along with Sarah.
Hi!
And we are here to do a landscape. And this is a beginner-friendly tutorial, so please don't feel intimidated. It'll be a really good one to paint if you're not, if you haven't had that much experience painting before. And just excuse me for a second. There we go. I just needed to turn my computer around. And we are just going to do some quick, quick. We're going to spend some time here, but it's going to be pretty easy. I didn't really plan what I was going to say before I started talking.
A little more
Usually
time.
I get 30 seconds before the live stream thing kicks in, and I'm like, la-di-da, oh, we're live. If you have any questions, just type the word question in all caps and then type your question regular, because for some reason when everything's in all caps, the YouTube just kicks the comment out like it's spam. And that way Sarah can easily find them. Now sometimes questions have been asked a lot, and in that case what happens is the moderators will answer your question immediately. So Sarah refers the questions to me that haven't been asked before, or ones that stump the moderators. And this video is brought to you by jerrysartorama.com. There's still time to get e-gift certificates if you have an artist on your Christmas list. And I have linked all the products that I'm going to use today in the video description. And anything else I forgot? Anything?
I think you got it all. Sorry, I zoned out there for a second.
We're just zoning. I've been wrapping presents all morning.
I've been prep cooking, and I made a batch of cookies before I came over here, so I'm just like doo.
Yeah. It is like, yeah, we're on the
tail end of Christmas here. We're getting all the details done.
Yeah, really. I was wrapping presents this morning, and I look at the clock, and it's 10 or 12, and my daughters have an early release day, so I knew they were gonna be through the door any minute, and I had to prep the live stream. And listen, the last couple presents aren't looking too magical, but they're wrapped at least. I'm getting some ultramarine blue on my palette. These watercolors are the Lucas watercolors that I bought last year because they had a really good sale on them. They were like, this set was like $114, and so I snagged it. I'm glad I did. They're nice quality paints. I am using burnt sienna and ultramarine, so I can kind of gray down this blue. I want a nice winter sky color, so I don't want it very saturated. And what I'm going to do is wet the top third of my paper. And I'm actually going to switch to a brush that's a little bit more absorbent, so I can really wet that paper well. And any big brush, really. Or you could use a spray bottle, but I want to keep the bottom part of the painting dry for the moment, because we are going to be kind of jumping around a little bit. For the mountains here, they're actually fairly crisp, and there's some white areas there. So I'm going to do the sky and just kind of paint down to the mountains, but I don't want a hard edge, so that's why I'm going to wet a little bit below where I want those mountains. But then we're going to jump down here and work on the foreground, which isn't going to really look like this. It's going to be snowy with some weeds kind of coming through. But I just wanted to show you this to kind of give you an idea of the composition. But we want to keep the bottom part dry for now, so that when we're done putting the sky in, we can jump down here and work on the foreground. And I'm going to do the sky a little bit deeper in color than what the picture is. Remember, it does dry a little bit lighter. And it can help if you tip your paper a little bit. And I'm going to turn that light. I feel like I was getting a little bit of glare. Sometimes I just like, if I have a really wet background, I like to just kind of put the paint at the top, and notice it's really watery. It's kind of like, I wouldn't even call it skim milk consistency. It's even thinner than that, and I'm just letting that paint kind of drizzle down on its own. I can help it along with horizontal strokes if I need to. I'm going to blunt my brush off here on a paper towel, and I'm going to kind of come through and pick up the leftover. Oh, right. So that it's not really concentrated. It's a very soft winter sky. The winter skies tend to be more white. If you want to lift out a couple clouds, you can. And to do that, you simply crumple up a dry paper towel, and you can lift them out wherever you want. I wouldn't go too crazy. Just a few. They're not going to show up that much anyway because the sky is so light. Okay, so now we are going to work in the foreground. I'm just going to shift this up a little bit so you can see the bottom of my paper really well. And I did adjust my camera, so hopefully you're getting a higher quality, kind of more in focus version here. And I'm grabbing a number 8 round. And I'm going to actually use that color I just had to kind of sketch on the dry paper where I want my snowy kind of ledge to be. And I'm working on dry paper. I haven't wet this yet, and I am just going to paint some snow shadows basically. So I'm painting around the highlights in the snow. I know it's not super dark. You want to keep it pretty light. Now I'm going to add a little color because the picture that we used was very monochrome. So I'm going to grab a little, let's see, I'm going to look at my color key, because when you have so many paints, in fact, I would recommend you going for a smaller set, maybe a full pans, because then it's easier, like if you want to get a big brush into the paint, and you get more paint in like the set of 24 full pans, or you pay a lot less for a set of 24 full pans and 48 half pans. So it's kind of a better value too. I'm going to go with magenta, which is this one right here. On its own is really strong, so I'm going to put it into that kind of grayed down mix. Add a little ultramarine to that. So I'll end up with kind of a mauve color. And I'm going to add some of that in here too. And I like to draw the eye through the canvas with kind of, or the paper rather, kind of like zigzaggy, and we're gonna have some more diagonals coming through with some trees, and I just feel like it gives you a really nice composition. You can always put more shadows in the snow too. We can't take them away, so you don't want to go too overboard with them. And I want to have some kind of foliage coming out of some of these like gullies. Like the shadows are going to be kind of like where you have dips in the snow, and that also would probably be where you would have your like foliage growing out of. So I'm going to grab some olive green. It's got a really pretty olive green. Make a little puddle of it on your palette. So when you're using half pans like this, you're going to find your round brushes are a lot easier to get your paint out of the palettes. I'm going to do a puddle of burnt sienna on its own. I'm going to do a puddle of ultramarine on its own. I'll move it over here. And let's do a puddle of magenta on its own, sticking with those colors. And let's grab some yellow ochre while we're at it. So I'm going to grab the magenta and the yellow ochre. And don't be shy if you do have questions, if you're confused. Oh, I'm actually going to try the gold ochre. That's kind of pretty. That's a little different. I think it's fun to throw in a different pigment than you're used to once in a while. We'll add that in there too. Okay, and I'm going to stick with the number 8 round, but if you feel like you'd rather have a liner or something smaller, then you can go right ahead and do that. I am going to grab some of the burnt sienna and just kind of flick up some grasses and weeds, branches, that sort of thing. And then I'm going to drop in some of the olive and ultramarine. Yeah, let's throw a little charge of magenta in there. I did clean my brush before the magenta because I didn't want that to get too dull. You can always make something more dull. You can't always brighten it back up again. And because the palette here is so kind of monotone, I wanted to really get some nice bright colors in here. I'm looking out the window and seeing a lot of that monotone.
Yes. More monotone, theoretically, later on today.
Yeah. I saved a meme once. Somebody shared it, and then I shared it on my Facebook, and it was Bob Ross in front of a white canvas, and it says, "You see how I layered the snow on top of more snow?" And it was just like a white canvas. I should add that. If I can find it, I'll add it to the blog post so you guys can enjoy that little Maine humor. kind of one of those ways you can kind of get those spontaneous effects that, sometimes you do a painting and you're like, oh, I just love what happened there. I wish I could recreate it, but I have no idea how I did it. This is kind of one of those ways you can recreate those kind of spontaneous watercolor melding and that beautiful kind of blending that looks like it didn't really have any human help. And when you want to darken something, try going in with either pure color or a color that you've mixed on your palette. You don't want to have to mess with it too much. You just kind of want to drop it in and let it do its thing. Mixing on the paper gives you really pretty, vivid results.
Daphne Price, if you are new to watercoloring, should you begin learning using pencils or a paint palette?
I think it really depends on what you want. I would probably say paints just because they're a little more versatile. If you feel like they're kind of like out of control, the paints are out of control and you don't like that, then use what you want to use. That's the most important thing. I'm going to switch to a liner because I feel like I'm not getting the long loose lines that I want.
Catherine Fail, how do you think the Lucas paints compare to Rembrandt paints?
I feel like Rembrandts are a little bit more luminous, and the Lucas are a little bit more earthy. They're not. It almost feels like they don't have quite as much gloss to them. Like maybe they don't have quite as much gum arabic. Maybe I think they might be one of those paints that don't use oxgall. I think Lucas might be one that doesn't use oxgall. But I didn't have any problem with it flowing. If you see here how the paints are flowing and melding together, I mean, I obviously didn't have any problem with that. So maybe somebody can hop over and check for me and see if Lucas is the ones that don't have oxgall added and let us know in the chat. That would be really helpful. Or if somebody happens to know, maybe Joe Maskey might know.
Joe's here, and Liquid Colors here, Eve's here, Bev Roberts.
Oh, I'm sure one of them know.
Grace is here, so we'll probably get the answer.
Oh, that would be fantastic. Five different times. Everyone's scrambling. So yeah, they definitely, like, if you look at the pans too, they're gonna look more matte, and the Rembrandts look a little bit more glossy just in the pans themselves. So yeah, I believe the Rembrandts are a little bit higher quality of a paint. I think, but the Lucas are definitely the best bang for your buck, I think. And that's a product that Jerry's has on sale fairly frequently. I think they're the only distributor in the United States of Lucas products, so they tend to have the best deals. Like when I saw these for $114, I was like, I can't resist. And I felt so guilty that I gave them to my husband. I said, Jason, I don't want anything for Christmas, but could you wrap these up for me?
Surprise!
It was one of the best Christmas presents I got.
Hey, that's okay.
Then it was nice because then I got to look forward to it because I think it was like November when I ordered them last year. And I hemmed and hawed. I really like the look of these colorful kind of branches coming through. If you don't like it, of course, you're painting your rules. Anytime I do something that you're like, ooh, I don't think that's for me, don't do it. It's probably going to be a little weird looking to figure out how this is going to come together too, because it is probably a little bit odd if you're new, especially. And if you're unsure about this part and you don't want to paint this yet and you just want to see how the rest of the painting comes along, you can do that too. You can put this in later. Just keep in mind that if you want snow here, you're going to have to make sure you keep some white area out. But I didn't want to do a drab snow scene. I've got enough drab snow happening.
I know.
I
Really.
I like the snow. It's pretty when it first falls, but then like after the salt trucks have been out and it's all gotten kind of...
Everything's been plowed and
Everything-
shoveled and sanded.
Yeah, everything's gray. Alright, I'm going to dry this. And then we're going to work on our mountains. So basically I just need to have the sky dry at this point. But if you wanted to take a break and, you know, that's always a good idea when you're painting like on your own at home, is to take a break when you're waiting for something to dry instead of rushing it with a heat tool or the hair dryer, just because it gives your eyes a chance to rest. And then you come back and you see the painting how it really looks and not how you think it looks. How many people do we have painting with us today?
We have 239 watching right now.
Wonderful.
Let's see. Cassandra Walton. I am new to watercolor painting, but I'm looking for cheap watercolor paints, brushes, and paper to start me off that I can find at my local Walmart or Michael's. Any suggestions?
Sure, Cassandra. She's looking for, I don't know how well the microphone's picking up with this going on, so I'm just going to repeat the gist of her question. She's just looking for inexpensive supplies she can find at her local, like, she's
Walmart or Michael's.
Okay. I would go with, if you can find cotton. That's usually sold probably at Michael's. I don't think you'd be able to find it at Walmart. At Walmart, though, if they sell the Prang brand, that's a great. It's like a little. It looks like a little kid's set of watercolor paints, but they're bright and transparent, and they're fabulous. And they're about $3.50. So you know, for under $5, you can get those. I would get a good quality paper. I know that Walmart has a Canson XL. And that would be all right to start you off in a painting like this. That would be absolutely fine. Any painting where you need to scrape or scrub, that paper is not going to deal too well with that. But the Strathmore 400 or the Aquabee that they sell at Michael's would be fine to use. I think that would suit you very well. And then for brushes, these right here are Royal 9 Nickel Majestics, and I know that Michael's has them, and they might also have Princeton. Like the Princeton Value line is really good, or the Princeton Snap line, and it's very inexpensive. And also, if you're a beginner and using student paints, having a synthetic brush like this is going to introduce less water into your pans, into your watercolor paints, so you're going to get more color and less water, and that will help you achieve more vibrant results like this, but with a budget paint. So, just don't. You're better off to get a couple good quality things than to get a bunch of crappy stuff. So, you know, just keep those brands in mind, and you can definitely, you know, spend under $20 and get yourself set up.
And Michael's always runs their coupons.
Oh, yes.
And they usually, like, around Christmas break or right before semester, if you have colleges anywhere nearby, a lot of times they'll have good sales on their art supplies for students who are taking art classes.
Oh, yeah.
So always keep your eye out on that. Because when I worked at AC Moore, every year, before a new semester started, we always had big sales on our art supplies.
Right.
Because we get the art students coming in to buy stuff. So.
Right, and you don't have to be an art student to get those deals. They sometimes offer an extra deal if you are an art student, but you don't have to. So I've mixed the burnt sienna and the ultramarine again to get myself a nice gray. If you want, and I don't think that, so now here's where another reason you might want to break from a reference photo. When I look at this, I see the undertones as kind of a greenish gray, but I really don't want to bring green in here because I think it's going to kind of it's going to give me more of a spring look than a winter look. So I'm just going to stick with that ultramarine blue and burnt sienna mix. I am going to start kind of sketching the mountaintop here.
Daphne Price, forgive my lack of knowledge, but what do you mean by the palette is more versatile than pencils, and what is a good brand of palette to begin with?
I mean, like paints in a palette. It could be a white dish. It doesn't have to be like a fancy palette. But because you can have 6 colors and you can mix pretty much anything you want, versus pencils where you kind of need more to work with. Otherwise, you're gonna wear those pencils down to nubs just trying to mix colors. I would get a palette of probably no more than 12 colors. Like the Lucas set of 12 is really nice. They even have the studio version, which is very inexpensive. It's about $11 or $12, and that would get you going with all the colors you need to mix whatever you want to mix. And it's just a little bit more versatile than trying to mix all those colors from the pencils. So there's kind of a couple layers of mountain here that I'm just trying to sketch in really lightly with my brush. You could also do this with a pencil, so that when I go in with a flat brush, I will have a little bit more freedom. I won't feel like I'm trying to make it all up as I go.
In liquid color, got back about the oxgal in Lucas.
Yes.
And she says, I'm not 100%, but their literature references adding synthetic oxgal to the paper if needed. So my guess is that the paints themselves don't contain it.
Okay, yeah, I think that might be the case. Although I haven't had an issue with them not flowing well. So, just kind of take that for what it's worth. But they're a fantastic paint. I find them very reliable. I haven't had any issues with anything fading that I painted last year with them that I've had around my studio downstairs with all the lighting that I have. So here what I'm going to do, I like to use a flat, and especially I like to use, and I didn't list it, I'm sorry, but any 1-inch flat synthetic that is not designed to be like a fake fur brush is going to be good for this, because I do not want a lot of water here. I want crisp lines. I'm working on dry paper. I'm working with the chisel edge of the brush. And then I'm just kind of pulling down. So I'm basically, again, painting the rocks around the snow. And go easy, because you can always put more rocks in, but you can't put the snow back in. The snow is the white of the paper. I mean, I guess you could with white paint, but I think it would really it kind of take away some of the look you have here. Now I think I might actually, now that I'm seeing I have some bigger areas where I'm going to have shadow, I think I might play around with adding some color into those while they're still wet. I'm going to grab some of this mixed purple. I'm going to tone it down a little bit because that's a little vibrant, and I'm going to add some of that right in there. Just let it flow. Yeah, we'll try a little bit of the green, but mixed with some ultramarine just so it's not too... Got to keep it nice and cool. Now I'm going to have to go back in with a brush and help it, because I had the synthetic brush here, it was not, where I went in with the mimic brush, which is supposed to act like fur, so it's more absorbent. When I went with that, it put more water down, more paint down than what I had, so it wanted to give me a blossom almost immediately. So I'm going in and just kind of dragging it to normalize that paper. So think of the areas of the mountain that would be grabbing, where the kind of the rocks would push through, and then you've got the little parts where the snow would kind of settle into the little gullies. You don't want anything too bright or too dark. This is background, and we're going to be putting a layer of trees over them, so we don't want anything that's going to be really difficult to cover up with a silhouetted tree. But we are going to be mixing a really dark color for the trees, so it won't be too difficult to cover up. Just doing taps with the chisel edge of my brush for these kind of smaller, flatter parts of the mountain where it's leveling out a little bit more. And twist your brush around so you get uneven marks. Twist and tap. I'm going to mix up a little bit more paint, but I'm mixing it with a round because rounds go into your palette a lot easier. You want a cooler gray, so just a little bit more on the blue side. I blotted my brush on a paper towel. I want to darken that a little bit because I've got kind of an outline from the my original sketch with the brush. And then if I feel like I'm getting a little bit of a blossom, I can go in with the flat and just kind of drag it.
in liquid color, the Lucas paints are vegan except for their PBK9 colors, so no oxgal.
Oh, okay,
according
good to know.
to Jackson's.
Good to know. So PBK9 would be a bone black, I believe. So made from animal bones. So I'm drawing this layer, and I'm going to go in with one more layer, just kind of glaze over some of the darks with some more gray, so I get that kind of two-tone shadow. We don't want a super ton of detail because those mounds are going to be pushed back. Okay, and I think I'm going to switch to a smaller brush. Maybe I'll go with this number 4 round. We'll see how that does, because it's not a real pointy one, so I don't think I'll get too much detail this way. I think I can just kind of like smush and wiggle it around and get some interesting texture. You were a fast typer, Sarah. Clickety
Sometimes.
clack.
Today I am. I'm all warmed up from cooking earlier, so my fingers are all nimble.
You can always go back in later if you decide that, oh, I want a little bit more, stones poking through the snow. You can always do that later. It's, since we're not working with super, super dark colors, it's going to be easy to, to go back in. You can even like wait to wash your palette, give your eyes a chance to rest after you do your painting, and then come back and you'll know whether, if you need to add something or darken something. And it's difficult to get the white back, so when in doubt, just hold off a bit. All right, I think that's all I'm going to do for that part of the mountains for now. And now I am going to work on the trees here. Oh, I do want to warm this part in here up a little bit with some magenta, very softly. I'm going to grab just a little bit of magenta there. I think I'll put just a smidgen of the burnt sienna in it because it is a little neon on its own. Oops, did I grab the right color? You don't that's the thing with so many colors. You have to be careful when you're doing like a limited color painting that you don't grab the wrong color. So it's really important to make a swatch. Look how watery this is. This is like, I don't know how to explain it. It's like a popsicle melted. It's like that kind of. Let's go in with this just to add a little bit of that to the foreground snow to show that it's closer to us, a little bit warmer. And then I will dry this. A little bit of the violet in there too.
People can hear me typing.
Yeah, somebody was saying that last week. It really stands out. All right, any questions while I'm drawing here?
We're all caught up at the moment. That
Great.
doesn't mean something can't pop up here momentarily.
I know, it's a 30-second delay. I'm going to have a sip of my cold tea.
Cold tea.
I just want to make sure that, because if you have any wet areas in the trees and you go to paint, in the mountains and you go to paint your trees, then that's going to wick into any areas that are wet. So you want to make sure that that your paint's only going to move where you want it to move. All right, so now we need to mix up some nice rich darks on our palette. And we're going to start off with making big, juicy puddles of color. And all these colors are going to mix together, so it's alright to work on top of areas that you've already been working.
Domingo, in the new children's book Lindsay illustrated, were those done in watercolor, pencil, or digitally modified?
Those were watercolor and colored pencil together. So the first layer was watercolor, and then I went over with colored pencil, Prismacolors actually. Some magenta. So if you were using like a student grade paint that didn't release quite as well with a wet brush, you'd want a stiffer brush because that way you wouldn't damage your paintbrush digging in trying to get more color. So just keep that in mind when you're painting. So because I want these trees to be really dark, I do not want to do them in water first. I'm going to go right in with paint and do them. I'm going to mix these two together to get a nice dark base. And I'm going to turn my painting kind of upside down, because I want to make my base of my trees kind of be down here, just beyond that ridge, a snowy ridge. And that will help me define that area. Now I think I will pull one up really high, higher than what I have in the reference photo, and I want it to go up into the sky a little bit. That's going to give us some scale. And I'm painting it upside down, but I will turn it around in a minute.
Madness, upside down painting.
Well, before, I used to hate to edit, and I really didn't have the extra time to spend on video editing, so I actually would paint upside down, so I wouldn't have to flip it around in video software. So if you go on my channel, some of my first watercolor videos were done upside down.
Oh, yeah. Pascalito, how do you imagine which colors to use in your painting that aren't in the photo? My problem is I always try to make it look exactly like the photo.
The key is painting from life. So anytime you can get out and paint from nature, that's going to teach you how things really look, and it will so that you can have options. Now, I actually recently picked out these books that I regretted not buying when I was younger, when they came out. They're the Artist Photo Reference series, and I check every once in a while on Amazon, and usually they're crazy expensive because they're out of print. But I got lucky a couple weeks ago, and I found all of the ones I didn't have, which I only had one, so actually it was all of them, between $5 and $25, and so I snagged them up. And what's neat about those books, if you ever find them in a used bookshop, or maybe you're lucky and you find them on Amazon and they're crazy expensive, is that they tell you how to use reference photos, which is something that some information you don't get a lot. And basically, you can take the colors from one photo, take the composition from another photo, take the sky from one photo, take the mountains from another photo, take the foreground from another photo, and then I think through observation, when the more you start noticing things in real life, because you're training your eyes, you're gonna realize how to adapt the lighting so it looks like they all came from the same scene. And it's observation, just try to pay attention to your surroundings when you're out in nature. Any chance you get to paint outside, especially if it's at a different locale than you're used to, take advantage of that and do it. And then you'll start to notice kind of undertones of colors, and when you start kind of pushing those undertones, that's when you get some really interesting results. You can see the different colors of the sunlight, how the sunlight can turn the branches red or orange, and then you can maximize those undertones so that you get a really dynamic picture. So short answer is paint more, and you'll get braver, and you'll understand where you can kind of push your colors a little bit.
Amber Pomranen, what would you recommend for gouache watercolors, specifically looking for a white for snow on pine trees?
I would go with Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White. It is a white gouache. It's extremely opaque, or you can thin it down if you want to for more translucent looks. That's been my go-to. But if you don't have access to that, look for a titanium white and not a Chinese white. That will be your, or zinc white. You want titanium white because that's going to be your most opaque. You don't want transparent mixing white or anything like that. So I'm having fun just adding colors to the wet tree and just kind of letting the colors float. And just be careful not to paint over your foreground. So the key here is to keep a wet edge. So as I'm working across, I'm making sure that I keep a wet edge. If I go next to a damp area with a really wet brush, I'm going to get a blossom. So I couldn't have started the whole row and then worked up as I wanted to. I needed to kind of just start that bottom ridge where I knew I was going to work immediately so that I wouldn't get a back run.
Crystal Tillman, can mixing different grades of watercolor paints, student versus artist, or brands, cause problems?
No, it shouldn't. In fact, a great way to decide whether you want to invest in a color is to try it in its student grade form first. Well, I feel like I want to bring some of that color in there, actually. So I just dragged down a little bit of that color. I thought that was kind of pretty, and I wanted to bring that zigzag composition, so I'm like, well, I could kind of bring that down in through here and glaze over some of those colors I have there and just kind of tie it in together a little bit. I like that. And the more you paint, the braver you'll get with choices like that. You could even sprinkle some salt into this while it's really wet and get some snowflakes happening.
Whoa. Whoa.
I know, you get a little crazy with your bad self.
Sheer madness.
Right. Bring some more trees over here. And I will start from a different color each time. And that way it'll assure that I'll end up with a really unique mix. And I don't want everything homogeneous. Homogeneous. My brain goes faster than my mouth sometimes. It's like, I know the word I want to say! But whoops, it's already out there and it wasn't the right one. I know what I mean. And I like to tip my paper so I can kind of guide how the paint's going to flow. It can also keep that wet edge that I was talking about so that I can keep adding to it, adding next to it, and not have a back run. So tipping that paper is helpful. Just it's like the technique of a graded wash or gradient wash or controlled wash, which I go into in my essential tools and techniques for watercolor painters. If you do feel like you need a little extra help in the watercolor department, that course is designed to get you up and painting in about 5 hours. Or there's 5 hours worth of video there, so I mean, you can do it at your own pace, but it's designed to have everything you need to know to get going and start off on the right foot. I do have a coupon code in the video description today for that if you want to give it a try. Please don't feel obligated to purchase anything, but if you felt like you needed a little extra help along the way, that resource is there.
Daliala, are there any paints you like in a student line but not in a professional line of the same brand, or vice versa?
Oh, that's a great question. Not really. I like Rembrandt, for instance. I love the Van Gogh line. I really like the professional line. Lucas has an excellent student line. I honestly think some brands, their student line is as good as their professional line. Because the thing is, if they bothered to have a student line, they're not going to make a crap. If they have a professional line too, they're not going to make a crappy student line, because that's, their student line is basically advertising their professional line. If their student line is no good, why would anybody try their professional line? Like for instance, Sennelier, I can barely tell the difference between their student line and their professional line. The downside is there's only like 24 colors or something. There's not as many, which is common with most student grade paints. But if you gave me those palettes and I didn't know, you just gave me the pans outside of a palette, I wouldn't be able to tell. for most colors. I don't think I'd be able to tell you which one they came from. So, gosh, I really can't think of one where I liked the student line and didn't like the professional line. I think once you get into a brand of paint that carries a student and a professional line, at that point, they're a pretty reputable line of paint, and they're going to be pretty decent, I think. That was a really good question, though.
Yeah, well, that's not one that's been asked before.
Yeah. Now here I think I want to have some nice bright, more of a bright tree, and then I'm going to let it dry, maybe sneak a darker one in behind it over here. So I've started off with that olive and just kind of let it float up. Maybe I'll even add a little bit of that golden ochre color that we haven't used. We just got a little bit of it out, but we didn't really use much of it. It's kind of a pretty color. It's like it's almost a little bit reddish. You can use a yellow ochre though. If you don't have it, use yellow ochre. It'll be just fine. I don't know exactly what I want to do there, but I just know I want it to be a little bit brighter. Thinking about maybe even dripping a little bit of magenta in there and letting it float. Maybe I'll see if I can sneak a few darker trees behind there. If I keep it tipped up like this and paint upside down, I think that I can. I think I'll start at the top of the trees, just so I get an idea of where I'm going to go with them.
Excuse me.
I was so tired last night. I went to bed at 9:30.
I was right behind you. I think I was in bed at like 10 minutes after 9.
I couldn't wait the kids. I was like, I'm gonna get all my Christmas wraps. I was feeling kind of a little bit behind the times. I had done some Christmas shopping, kind of last minute. Well, not last minute, but I had planned to go Christmas shopping because I was going to be in town yesterday. And I'm like, okay, I just want to get everything wrapped, make sure I know what I have, and make sure that I have everything I need. And I made the mistake of laying down on the couch waiting for the kids to get ready for bed.
That would do it.
And Jason's like, well, why don't you just go to bed? I'm like, I gotta wrap presents. He's like, why do you have to wrap them tonight? I'm like, good point, I'm going to bed.
I'm like, I don't know, why do I?
Why do I? I'm going to bed.
No.
Wise. So I wrapped this morning and I had much more energy than I would have last night. I would have been crabby wrapping presents last night.
Oh, yeah.
I was tired. I don't like to do stuff when I'm tired.
It would not have been as enjoyable as it probably was this afternoon.
Right. I've been really into all those health documentaries on Netflix.
Oh, God.
Yeah, so...
What are you learning?
I'm learning...
What are we all doing wrong?
I'm learning that I am so wise to be on a plant-based diet is what I'm learning. But then again, I could be just, watching the documentaries that tell me what I want to hear.
That's true.
I'm not 100% sure there. But... yeah, big health quest. Big health quest next year. Well, I'm pretty healthy, but I think that we, as a society, and definitely our family, relies on too much processed foods, from granola bars to frozen pizzas and junk like that, because it's convenient.
Mhm. Yeah.
So.
Well, and for how many years we're all told low fat, low calorie, and that's what all that packaged stuff is,
Yep.
which is, excuse my language, a chemical shitstorm.
Yep. Wow, that was some strong language.
That's why I said, pardon my language, chemical storm.
Yeah, and I think of how I used to eat before I had kids. It was all beans and rice and oatmeal and just super simple things. Mm-hmm. And I rely on veggie burgers a lot, and the veggie nuggets and other things that are pre-made and convenient and healthier than their meat counterparts. But
I would question that, because I think if you went through and looked at the ingredients in some of them compared to just getting, if you bought some good beef from a reliable farmer,
That's true.
You know, I'm not saying all brands, but I bet if you compared some of the brands to, like, you know, you go to a farm where the cows have names and are grass-fed and no chemicals and hormones. I wonder what would technically be healthier.
Yeah. Anytime you do something to make something last a long time is putting
Right.
chemicals and.
But I've noticed, I mean, since I started cutting out all that processed stuff, like, I feel so much better, and when I do go and eat that stuff, my body is like, why are we digesting this garbage?
And you look great. I mean, you have
and
lost a
then my
lot of
body's
weight.
like, no, we're gonna make you pay for this decision.
Mm-hmm. The bill will come due.
Domingo, what is the strategy for a night scene where the trees would be lighter than a darker background? Would that need a frisket?
Well, I suppose you could. I think I would work light to dark. Paint your lightest areas first and then keep layering over the darker areas. If you don't have to, preserve out any bright white, I think that's how I would do it. All right, it's nice colorful trees there. I'm happy with that. So I think I want to work in the foreground a little bit just to bring a little bit more detail to that. But I'm really liking the colors that I have happening in there. And I'm really liking the mountain. I covered up all my pinkish snow. If you wanted to leave some more of that showing, you absolutely can. In fact, it will give you more depth in your scene if you do that. But I am going to go ahead and maybe put a few more details. And I think I'll switch to my liner just so I don't get too carried away. So I'll just pick up any sort of sludge I have left over on my palette to do this. And I'll start by adding a little bit of dark towards the bottom of a shadow area, and then just kind of drag up some grasses. So any colors that you've used so far are fair game for this. And you don't want to cover up everything. You just want to layer on some details. In fact, I want to get that gold back a little bit. That's a pretty color we didn't use very much. This is not a metallic gold. It's just an irony gold, kind of like your yellow ochre. With different colors once in a while, after you've been painting for a while, just because it gives you a little bit of surprise. And you can even wet the bottom of the area you want to go in with some more color if you want to encourage it to blend a little bit more. This is the magenta and the yellow, the golden yellow mix. Any place you feel it's a little dull, go in and add some other colors. This is your landscape. You can do whatever you like. And I feel like I might want to warm up the snow a little bit here with some of that pink, especially since we lost all of it over by the mountains. So I'm going to go in with just that watery magenta. I think it was magenta with a little bit of that golden yellow. And I'm going to give this a dry and then see what else I need to add for any darks. So if you have any questions while I'm drying, go ahead and ask it. I'm getting a little bit of a bloom here. If you can see where the trees were damp and I went in and snuck in those trees behind it. So I'll probably have to do a little bit of adjusting in there to In fact, I might want to blot a little bit now, so I can correct that. So I got a little bit of a bloom there, but it's not going to be a big deal. It'll be fun to look at the reference photo when we're done and see how different we've made it.
It's pretty different. Amber Pomeranian, have you used Aquaboard before?
Yes, I have. That's a product by Ampersand. It's a like a hardboard panel, kind of like masonite, that's coated with a almost like a watercolor ground, and you paint on it, and just like you would like a canvas or whatnot, but you use your watercolor paint, and it's really easy to lift back to pure white. I personally didn't care for it that much. I prefer paper, but if you want to be able to white back completely to the white of your paper, you want a more robust surface, and you want to maybe do a watercolor painting that you can then varnish and not have to frame under glass, then it's a good solution. Did she have a specific question about Aquaboard? Or?
No, she was thinking about getting some, so she didn't know if you've used them.
I have. It wasn't my cup of tea, but it doesn't mean that you won't love it.
Buy a couple, see what happens.
Okay, now I'm looking at this, and I think I want my mountains to be a little cooler. So I'm actually going to mix up a really watery mixture of kind of light bluish gray. So I'm going to clean off a little area in my palette where you can see it. Grab a little of the ultramarine, quite a bit of water. I'm going to add a little bit of this mix that's kind of purpley gray. Add a little bit of green to it. There we go. And I think I will switch to a flat brush so I can just kind of drag that color on. See if I have anything that's like a small angular actually, because I don't want it to have too much water. I'm going to go with this Aqualon. You can use a flat or an angle. I just wanted this because it's a golden Taklon bristle, which doesn't hold that much water and paint, so I know that I'm not going to get too aggressive of a shadow in here. Let's see, I can just kind of very gently darken that up. But it's going to be really hard for me to go overboard because this just won't hold too much. I think that's looking a lot better. Just that little bit of shadow and coolness. It helps. It's going to help push it back because I felt like I really compressed the depth of field when I lost this band of the warmer colored snow. You can also lift up if you have anything that's too sharp. You can lift it up with a brush like this because the bristles are a little bit tougher. They can take kind of scrubbing your paper a little bit, and you can soften. You can soften an edge if you want to. I want to soften some of those edges I sketched in with my round brush because they were a little too dark. And since we used ultramarine blue and burnt sienna as our colors, they're very liftable. So it's easy for me to soften that. If you want to remove more paint, just grab your paper towel and you can blot it. It can actually look like you've got a little fog back there too when you do that. It's hard to see exactly what you need to do sometimes until you're right at the end and you kind of see all the elements together. And this definitely was just too sharp. There, to me that looks a lot better. And now another brush I want to introduce you to is, and some of you who have been following my channel for a while are familiar with a dagger. The reason I like them is because you can, excuse me, you can get some really interesting lines, and they're all going to be a little different. So I'm going to make my nice dark with the ultramarine blue and the burnt sienna. And I'm going to grab a little of that violet that I mixed with the magenta and the ultramarine blue. I'm going to go in and throw in kind of some lost and found branches on some of these. Especially the ones that would be a little bit warmer, because they would be closer to the viewer. And I kind of want to paint around. I want to have kind of like a little tuft of foliage in the foreground that I'm kind of painting around, so I can do that. Oops, there we go. It's easier to drag the color towards me than to push it. So I think I want these to be their own kind of shape, so I'm just going to pull up some shrubs. There's so many decisions you make in the course of a painting. Over here in that green one, I think I want to make some kind of red branches kind of coming in front, and I'm going to use burnt sienna and magenta for that. Maybe a little bit of gold. Get those white areas too. And then I want to darken like this little section of trees in here. The bloom pretty much disappeared when I dried it, after I blotted it and dried it. I want to get kind of dark with that, so I'm going to make a violet with the ultramarine and magenta. I'm going to add a little bit of green to that. Let's see what that does. That little part I want to push back a little bit duller and darker. And I like how these little sparkles of light from where the paper was dry are kind of showing through. I think that gives it a little bit of a life. So don't worry about having it perfect and getting rid of all that, because that can really give you some interest. A little bit over here behind that tree. A bit more blue to darken it up. We're just about ready to wrap this painting up, I think. So if anybody has any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat now. I will be doing one more dry of this just so you can see it finished and dried. But we are pretty much done with this, I think. A little more blue here. Alright, I'm going to dry this. And it's totally fine to use a hair dryer. I just happen to use a heat tool because I always have one plugged in for stamping projects, but you don't need to have it if you don't want one. Quiet group today.
It is. There's been a lot of chat going on, but pretty quiet overall as far as questions.
Well, take that to mean that I explained everything well, so we didn't need to.
Right.
I'm just doing a little negative painting down here while I dry. I'm pulling in some shadows, so just to give a little more shape to this kind of bunch of grasses I have growing there. Old dry grasses. But I hope you guys give this a try. It's a nice, fun, and easy tutorial that will let you play with kind of on the paper mixing, and lets you get some of those really pretty spontaneous melding of colors. It's really a good exercise for playing with shadows.
Mary Shen, what yellow ochres do you recommend that are not opaque?
Well, if you want one that's not opaque, try a raw sienna instead of yellow ochre. Raw sienna will be more transparent. The Winsor & Newton raw sienna is pretty transparent. Opaque by its nature is a little more opaque. Or if you look for a yellow ochre that uses the pigment PY42 instead of PY43. PY42 is synthetic and it's going to be more transparent because it probably doesn't contain the iron that the mineral that the original one does. So there you go. Does that look done to you, Sarah?
I think it is. I think if you mess with it, you're going to overwork it.
Yeah, I think so too. And this is something that should really be just kind of loose and free and fun. I want to thank our sponsor, jewelriesartorama.com. If you are in need of any of the supplies I used today, check them out. They usually have great prices on the Lucas paints. They do have great prices on the Lucas paints. Sometimes you get a super sale on them. That's when their price goes to the lowest possible price. And I think they're a great paint for the money. They are less expensive than a lot of the other name brand paints. So if you're in the market for some high quality watercolors, give them a try. I really enjoy them. I should use them more often. But that said, if you don't need anything, don't go buy it just because I, said I liked it. Buy what you need. And also, if you are in the mood for any watercolor classes of mine, I do have a coupon code in the video description so you can save 35%. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, happy crafting!